I'm gonna hold his tail in the same way. In general, you only want to breed healthy animals. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather and today we're going to be discussing a very important topic when it comes to raising meat rabbits or really any rabbits for any reason on your homestead. Breeding is the first step to getting meat in your freezer, so it's a very important step and part of the process. I have a brand new litter of meat rabbits over here and I thought it would be kind of fun if we looked at baby bunnies before we talked about how they got here. So at first glance you may look in this nesting box and decide that you don't see anything going on in there. There's actually a lot going on in here. She has hidden her babies very, very well and I haven't counted them yet. I like to count the babies basically within 24 hours of their birth, remove any dead ones, and make sure that I can keep track of how much food is in their bellies. But we'll get a lot more into that when we talk about baby rabbit care and that episode. But for this one, it's strictly breeding. So we're gonna count them, put them back, and then get into chat about breeding. Two, three, four, wow. So it looks like in this litter we have 5 baby bunnies. 4 of them are of normal size for a Californian meat rabbit, and this little runt, we'll see if it survives. It may not. So there are a total of 5, which is not a huge number. So 4 rabbits in a litter is pretty small, and that could be attributed to the time of year when I bred these rabbits. So I bred Delilah here towards the end of August and the beginning of September. Here in southwestern Kentucky, in general, that is the time of year when we see temperatures that don't really get above the mid 80s, and that's a really good temperature to start breeding rabbits, and we breed actually through the winter here. If you experience temperatures that are pretty consistently above 85 degrees in your area, that's going to affect the fertility of your bucks. The heat of the day actually can make them go sterile, and so our buck wasn't necessarily shooting blanks at the end of August, but I'm gonna guess that he wasn't up to his full performance. So I'm really happy with that litter, considering that not long after this particular litter was conceived, we had a surprise heat wave here that took our temperatures well over 100 degrees for a couple days. That's very hard on meat rabbits, so I would highly advise against breeding when you have temperatures consistently above 85 degrees. On the same note too, generally when the days get shorter, sometimes the does are a lot less likely to breed. And consequently, the shorter days are what coincide with the cooler temperatures, so it can be a little bit rough trying to breed rabbits through the winter. You can put a light on your does, and I do that here. This light right up here in the corner is on a timer, and it comes on around 3:30 in the morning so that we can have a consistent 14 hours of daylight here in the barn for our rabbits and for our quail so they can keep laying. A really basic thing when it comes to breeding rabbits is understanding the difference between a male rabbit and a female rabbit, and it can actually be really difficult when it comes to rabbits. So we're going to look at the differences right now. So this here is Fluffles. She's my daughter's pretty bunny, as we call them. We do also raise pet rabbits here for the local farm store, and she's one of our main mamas for that. She's going to have babies very soon. I can feel her milk coming in. But if we take a look at Fluffles here between the legs, we can determine whether or not she's a boy or a girl. I know she's a girl, but what I'm going to do is take these 2 fingers here and kind of support her tail. I can take my thumb and then pull back on the top part of her genitalia here, and males and females both will have a protrusion. The difference in being able to tell male and female is in the opening. So in females, it's more of a slit, while with males, it's more of a dot. So Fluffles actually has babies in here. She was due yesterday, and I thought that she hadn't delivered because it didn't look like her nest box had really been disturbed. So there's some pretty bunnies to look at too. 1, good girl. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, good job, Mommy. Is that your baby? So this here is a buck rabbit. This is my backup buck, a Californian, and we're gonna show you what his bits look like. So I'm gonna hold his tail in the same way, and use my thumb to protrude. So again, both males and females will protrude. It's about the opening. He has a much smaller opening that is more like a dot and less like a slit. Male rabbits, it's also easy to see their testicles, especially when it's really hot. When they're laying down, you can see those there. But it's a lot harder to tell male and female with baby rabbits. I don't have any baby rabbits that are of age to show you that, but I will eventually, and we'll go over this again because it is more difficult when they're really little. You generally can't tell their sex until they're around 3 to 4 weeks old. So now that you've got your official male, your official female, and it's of the right temperature outside, it's time to bring them together, but they also have to be at the right age. So with bucks or the males, they generally aren't interested in breeding until around 6 months of age. You can try as early as 3 months, but they may not really have any interest or know what they're doing until around 6 months. With the does, because they're the ones being pregnant, they need to be of good size and of good age. I have bred as young as 4 months old, and that has worked out well for me. Many people do not breed their does until they are also 6 months old. It's really a matter of choice at that point. We have had zero issue breeding at 4 months old. So when you breed your rabbits, it's really important that you bring the doe to the buck's cage. If you flip it around and bring the buck to her cage, there's a very good chance that she could kill him. Does are very, very territorial, and they are very aggressive when another animal enters their space, and sometimes when a human enters their space. I know Fluffles really well, but I don't necessarily know Delilah very well. So you may have noticed that I acted a little bit differently with them because I don't really understand Delilah's temperament yet. She's a new doe to me this year. So to keep your buck safe, take her to his cage, and you still want to watch him because does can be aggressive even when they are put into the buck's cage. So just because you see the buck mount the doe doesn't mean that the deed was done. There's an important part to the whole process that is called the fall off, and that is when the buck copulates with the doe successfully, and he celebrates that with falling off quite dramatically and sometimes stomping his feet. In order to make sure everything's stuck and is good and that the doe has the highest chance of pregnancy, you want to see the buck fall off or successfully breed 3 times in that session. I actually did get video of a non-successful fall off, so you can kind of see the difference. Earlier when we saw the successful breeding, you could see the doe lift up her back end and a successful fall off at that point. This clip actually shows the doe not lifting, but the buck falling off anyway. It's a less dramatic fall off, but he absolutely did not make connection with the doe in that clip. The doe absolutely can get pregnant with 1 fall off. 3 isn't expressly necessary in order to get a litter of babies. It just helps ensure that that will be the outcome. I'm going to interject in on myself a little bit here. I realized that I actually didn't mention something pretty important. So your buck rabbit, he is able to service 1 doe per day. You don't really want to give him more than that because it just will affect the effectiveness of his fertility. He may not be able to retain fertility for the second doe after he's serviced the first doe. All he really needs is around a day in between does, and everything should be just fine. I also like to breed at least 2 does at once. I recommend that everybody do so just in case something goes wrong with either litter. You can actually foster over kits from one litter to the next. I've had a lot of success doing that. So in order to basically increase the effectiveness or the success of your rabbitry, breeding 2 does at once can help give you a fallback option. Now when it comes to which rabbits to breed to each other, how do you go about determining if it's a safe and ethical breeding? So if you're just breeding for meat, it honestly genuinely doesn't matter who you breed to each other. If these animals are just going in the freezer, you could breed brother and sister and get some kits out of that that would be fine for the freezer. But if you're like us and you're trying to breed for breeding stock, maybe you want to retain some does, maybe you want to sell some bucks, what have you, you want to make sure that you are not breeding brother to sister. That's way too close. You can breed father to daughter or mother to son. Actually, Fluffles here, she was bred to her son for those kits, and this was our intention. So what what we're trying to achieve in doing that is getting a litter of rabbits all with the very plush Rex fur. Her baby has a lot of really plush Rex fur, and I think if we breed him back to her, we can pretty much guarantee that all of the kits will have that trait. I can't tell right now because they're still really little, but I'm really excited to see the outcome of that breeding. So in general, if you breed in the family tree vertically, you shouldn't run into problems. If you breed horizontally, like brother and sister or even cousins, things like that, that's where the genetic pool is a little bit muddy and you could wind up with some issues. But if your goal is just freezer rabbits, there's really no problem with that. Before breeding too, you also want to make sure that your rabbits are in good health. You want to check their teeth and make sure they don't have any issues in there. They should line up really well. The front teeth need to come up in front of the back teeth. You don't want anything crazy going on because those animals won't be able to eat properly and they probably won't have great condition. And if they pass those genetics on, then those babies in the very least won't be able to eat well and won't grow very well for the freezer. You want to check their eyes and make sure that they're clear. You want to make sure they don't have any ear mites going on. You want to check their coat and make sure that they don't have any external parasites. In general, you only want to breed healthy animals. You also want them to be of a good sound body condition. Rabbits that are of a good body condition have a really nice thick backstrap on them. They look nice and hardy and they don't have any sunken in parts. If you can pet the back of your rabbit and really feel a sharp backbone, this is not a rabbit that you want to breed. You want to work on the conditioning first. So like we talked about a little bit before with the lighting issue, sometimes does just won't lift. Usually the buck isn't the issue. Usually bucks are very ready and eager to breed, but sometimes the doe can be a little bit apprehensive. Now I know there's a lot of different ways to kind of trick the doe into lifting or convincing her that it's good time to breed. The one thing that I have had personally work for me is the light and repetition. So if I have a doe, I keep bringing her to the buck and she keeps not lifting. If I bring her to him every morning and every evening, generally it takes less than a week before she's warmed up to him and she's ready to breed. There are a couple other tricks that people do. They'll put apple cider vinegar in the water. They'll feed black oil sunflower seeds. They will do a thing where they switch the doe and the buck's cage around in order for her to really get used to his smell. And sometimes you can actually just choose a different buck. These does sometimes do have preferences. Rabbits have a 31-day gestation, so from the time of breeding until they have their babies is a 31-day period. We give the nest box around day 28, and that's our next video. We're going to be talking about everything preparing for babies and also caring for baby bunnies. So I hope you subscribe and stick around. It's going to be a really good series. He's kind of fat. Huh? Are you kind of fat?